Welcome to Ballsy, the podcast where I interview successful artists and creators on how they got the balls to sell their art and turn their practice into a profitable business. As a former entrepreneur turned artist, I realized that being an artist is basically like running a small startup. And you, the artist, are the CEO. I talk to artists about their businesses, talk real numbers, growth hacks, tools and tricks, and how they were ballsy enough to make that their career. Okay, everybody, welcome to the Ballsy Podcast. This week, we have an amazing photographer, Brad Walls, who will be joining us. So to start, Brad, why don't you give us a little background on your work and then also where they can find you so people, as they're listening to it, can like snoop and see your work, and then we'll start digging deep.
My name is Brad Walls. I'm a visual artist, photographer, hailing from Sydney, Australia, currently in New York, living the dream. And you can find me on Instagram on Brad's Canvas or website, bradscanvas.com.
Very nice. So just so people have a framework of kind of what your work is and looks like, just give a little description of the styling of your work so people have context in terms of what we're about to discuss.
Yeah, so I started out my career maybe in art 5-6 years ago as solely a photographer, only using drones, so only aerial. And I work through, as every other photographer that starts out, figuring out what they want to do and what they want to take pictures of. I, at the time, was traveling a lot, so I took photos of my travels, and that eventually led to me finding my visual language, which turned into a more, I would say, a design side of photography. Originally, I was a product designer in tech, so I worked a lot with applications and designing those experiences. So I've moved the learnings from my product design into my photography. I had a book that launched in 2022, which was all about swimming pools from above. I had a viral moment in 2020 during COVID, whereby 20 of those images from that series made headlines. I think it was perfect time in terms of people were really fighting for something that was outside their four walls during COVID. So they saw a beautiful cerulean pool and they were like, yeah, I'm on it. So I got tons of clicks. I was very fortunate to get a book publishing deal with an independent Melbourne publisher back at home. That led me on to more travel over a year and a half, taking 89 swimming pools. We launched that book. We sold near 2,500 copies. And now I'm moving my career into a more contrived look, looking at more artistic photography. I'm done with swimming pools for a bit. So now it's really thinking about bigger projects and a more, contrived look that I've been pursuing.
Nice. Thank you. That's awesome. The pool stuff is they're awesome. I have a whole bunch of pool questions, but we'll get to those a little later. So my question is, one, how long have you been an artist / photographer? And what did you do, or did you do anything before you were a artist / photographer?
Yeah, so I would say at this point, it's been 5 to 6 years solely doing photography, whether that's part-time, had another job, but 6 years pursuing this. Before that, I was a product designer. So I have a real interest in design. I would say I'm more of a designer than an artist, if we can make these classifications these days. But if you would put me in a party, I more gravitate to designers than the artists.
Your aesthetic, like your photography aesthetic is like super designy. Like it feels like if a graphic designer had to design a picture, like that's what it would look like. So I get
Correct.
it. At what point, I'm always curious. So you were obviously doing photography on the side. At what point did you, quote unquote, turn pro? Like when did you realize that I don't want to be a product designer anymore, or I like photography more? What was the catalyst that allowed you to switch from being a product designer to going photography all out?
I think obviously financial, the thing that kind of can give you that freedom, working towards that publishing deal, print sales, 2020, 2021 was like this massive boom moment for me. So I was able to let that product design job go and able to focus on photography. But I will actually preface, because I'm a big fan of transparency, I still hold a regular job, actually, and that's to
Oh, yeah?
really fund. Yeah, that's to really fund a lot of my bigger projects that I'm pursuing. I really try and own all of these processes myself, but it's more of a part-time thing. Yeah, it's been like the art world is up and down, right? So it's hard to know. And I think stability is the main thing that I need. And that if that means I have to forego summer hours where I have to have a stable income and the art is the focus of doing projects, and so be it.
Let me tell you, mine was by kind of luck and chance, but I have a side hustle business that is just that. Like you said, art goes like this. You have amazing years, okay years, bad years. And something that smooths that out a little bit is always helpful and to fear away and allows one to be more creative and take bigger risks in the artistic profession. So like I said, so on this podcast, I'm always really curious about business. So first, I always we look at this similar to a P&L. So we'll look at revenue and sales and get a sense of like how your business works. So obviously you're a photographer. So I assume most of your business is prints. Is it limited editions? Is it originals? Like, how do you go about deciding what to sell?
Yeah, it's actually there's two aspects here, which the second one has actually come in more recently. Yeah, print sales for sure. That is, I would say majority, 60, 70% this year, but also licensing is also something that's really popped up for me recently, which is a bit of a surprise for me. Yeah, I would say at the moment we're at about 60, 70% in print sales, the other 30% in licensing.
Okay, I'm very excited to hear about the licensing part. Let's go through the print sales first because that's the easy one. How do you structure it? Do you do limited editions? Do you do originals? How do you decide how to price those? Is it one of these or are you more formulaic about it? What's your process on that?
Yeah, so I started out young, dumb, and again, when I had this boom period, I had galleries that reach out that were like, we want to represent you, we want to do this, sign these agreements. And of course, I'm like 26 and wanting to do all of that. And I enter into these agreements and they're not great and all of that. So I got stung pretty early just with some shady snake oil kind of characters in the art world, which maybe we can talk about a bit later, but I have very strong opinions of that
art world. I never would have thought.
Yeah, so... And then I've been everywhere with pricing my prints, really just dependent on where I'm at. But now I think I'm in a good place. How I work that out is I try and see where I am relevant in the market, given other personalities, personas. And more likely they're represented by galleries, which at this stage I'm choosing not to be. And I simply whack 50% off that. It's not too hard. I do also the tiering in pricing is, I think the max edition I do is 12 and it works all the way down to 3. So I don't know, I have 4 sizes and it kind of 12, 8, 5, 3 or something like that. Not too difficult. It sometimes changes depending on the series, but yeah, mostly it's that.
And so what's the high price point versus the low ballpark?
Yeah, so 2.9 is the high for something that's a max of 48 inches on the long side. Okay. And that goes all the way down to 20 inches. And that's like entries like 890. Okay. If you have something right under the $1,000 mark, that's actually the money ball. That's one I actually really want people to get because they see under the $1,000 mark and they're like, okay, that's the one.
Okay, so you find the $1,000 that bifurcating.
Yeah. Okay. That's why I have editions of 12. That's the one I sell most commonly.
Got it. So those are your best sellers, I assume? Mm-hmm. Volume-wise?
Yep. Volume-wise, yeah.
How many pieces do you actually make a year? Like, how prolific are you? Are you putting a series out? Are you series-based? What's your formula for pushing fresh work out?
Series-based, between 15 to 20 images at this stage. However, the projects I'm trying to do are becoming more complex. The scale is increasing, so therefore the number of projects is decreasing. But that's just me being at a point in my career where I'm just ready to just take on that and give it a real risk. And I don't want to be 40 and still struggling, so I'd rather do it now, take the risks and see where it goes. But yeah, this project I'm doing at the end of the year, which is it's going to be somewhere between a Spencer Tunick and Busby Berkeley. It's going to be a massive ballet shoot, the biggest I think ever done. It's going to be in Brooklyn. So I'm leading up to that, but it's in September, right? So the logistics around that is just insane.
God, there's so many questions. Like each one, I get so many questions from. So on a project like that, right? So you have logistics. So I assume you're getting a lot of ballerinas to do cool stuff in a room at the same time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
so you have to coordinate everyone showing up. You have to coordinate the outfits. You have to coordinate the space. You have to coordinate lighting, effects, image, overall appearance. So are you doing all this yourself? Do you have a team of people that helps you? Do you have
Yes. The first time I'm relinquishing control. And this has also been a big learning for me, is to bring on really talented people that are driven for the same projects that I want to do. I'm leading that vision, but surrounding myself with really talented individuals and that are driven for the same vision we're coming together on. And it's also very collaborative too. I'm the person that needs to have the ivory tower of ideas. The best idea wins in the room. We're collaborating. I'm collaborating with a choreographer. We've got a lighting team. We've got a massive drone production team that I'm working with, just multiple ballet individuals going to come help out in the day. And of course, the 50 odd dancers, right? So yeah, this is a huge challenge for me, but one like I'm super, super keen on, and I'm really excited for it.
And do you fund this all yourself?
Yeah, we're in the stages of figuring out what this looks like, but I want to own majority of the piece of it. I do have donors that I reach out to if needed, and I'll try and get some sponsors on as well. I am a person that wants to pay everyone involved, especially the talent. I've never done a shoot where I haven't paid anyone. So it's like something that's ingrained in me. But yes, I will reach out to donors if I feel like they'll be interested in it. And we work out some arrangement, whether they get a piece in the edition or et cetera, et cetera. So that's all worked out. But yeah, majority will be funded by me.
And do you calculate how many pieces you're going to have to sell to offset the cost plus make enough money to live? Do you do the math at the beginning? So before you take on all this cost, do you have a realistic assessment of what you need to perform to make this work?
Yeah, I've got a rough idea in my head, but then again, this series, I plan to put a bit of a fuck you price on it.
Okay.
That's where I'm sitting. It'll be priced quite high, just because of the scale of this is massive. I have an idea. It's not in another world, and I won't be able to raise the funds or fund it myself. It's within range, but it's definitely a lot larger than what I've done before.
But that's the best because you challenge yourself and push yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what the fun comes. This is a nice segue because you're going to charge bigger money. You're doing bigger things. On the sales side, where do most of your sales come from? How does that break out for you?
Weirdly enough, California, 90%.
Oh,
yeah,
really?
I have a very, it all started from pools, and my niche, I actually know I'm quite sales driven. I look at demographics quite heavily. And I'm between the 45 to 65-year-old mark, and mostly women. So
really,
that's a very specific answer. Yes.
But being able to drill down on your customer like that, because then you can advertise to it. If you know who your segment is, you can obviously then expand your market. So you said you had some bad gallery experiences, so you don't do the gallery life.
No, there's a couple that if they say, hey, I've got a couple prints floating around with me, do you want me to show them in this show? I'm like, yeah, I take it as it comes. But no, I've rejected anything that's come my way. I've just had a couple really bad experiences. One notably that I'm going to name names. He just didn't contact, he has my works now. I think he sold half of them, won't contact me back. Who knows where they are? So it's that kind of thing. And when you speak to people in the world, maybe you would know yourself the way you responded to how I said snake, or it's common, right?
You would hope there'd be more reputable people. But the sad reality is that's every business. You just have to find the right people to work with. And oftentimes It takes a kick in the butt. So do you sell directly? Do you do social media from your website? What are the sales channels that you find are the most effective for you?
Yeah, right at the start, I was in that boom period of social media. So that really nice period of 17 to 2021. That was really growth period for me. So I was selling a lot through there. And then I took my marketing channels to PR, and I really started to connect with media publications. And then that's when Pools came out. That's when The Buzz came out. That also was another channel. And now I've got a newsletter that I run. So those three channels now combined. But I would say the lead time of people finding who I am to a sale runway is about a year. And
okay.
that's just building trust. That's seeing who I am. I think what's also interesting to me on my social media is I've actually started to post images with my prints in physicality. And that's also changed the behavior of some of my buyers. Because I think before that's been a bit of a fugazi post on Instagram, who is the kind of thing. But then as soon as you start to show that now the works are being printed and they're being sold, all of that process just builds trust with buyers. And okay, he's selling, like this guy's legit. And I think that's feedback that I've had that's been positive. So I've started to do that more, and that's really working as well.
Now, in terms of your sales, do you do the prints and the actual fabrication? Do you print them yourselves? Do you send them out to a third-party printer? Like, do you deal with the sales, and are you doing the fulfillment and the actual packaging, or do you have like other people that help you with that?
Yeah, a couple of things there. I have a production assistant that offers clients mock-ups for every client that comes. Just part of what I offer. Majority take that, so they'll send a picture of the space they're looking for, and we go away and we mock that up. We try a few ideas. The client goes to buy, and then I send it out to my printer here in Brooklyn. We get it printed. They ship it out. Very rarely that I would do framing, mounting, that service. It has to be like a bigger deal, like a hotel or someone that I'm a repeat client that I'm very close with. So that's the process.
And in terms of the sales itself, do you have other sales reps, or you deal with most of the sales yourself?
No, it's all me. It's all me. Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. Yeah. Yeah, I've had some experience. Didn't really do much for me. I'd rather handle it internally. Also, there's this client relationship that builds, and I've had repeat customers because of the interactions they get to have with the artist, and that's constant feedback that they enjoy that. I like to keep that in-house for now.
So one of my favorite questions is, how much time do you actually spend on like making the art versus all the stuff it takes you to make the art?
Oh, I wish more, but it's a great question. I think the first year I started doing this, I was pumping content out. I was like trying to figure out who I was. But now it's not as much. I'm very strict with what I put my energy towards in my body of work, what I decide to produce. And I sit on ideas for months, drawing up stuff. And that's also like a part of my process that is a little different, is that I draw everything out prior to going even to a shoot. So all of these compositions are drawn out. I get on site and it's like executing on the frame. Nothing is feel for me, which is a little different to a lot of photographers that go out into the street and just feel it. I've never felt it. It has to be a very contrived image, and I go out and execute on it. But I would say less and less as the projects get bigger and bigger.
Okay. Do you sell on third-party sites or anything along those lines, or is it all the traffic basically? I know there's a bunch of like photography and art sites that are middlemen, like pseudo online galleries. And so that's actually a perfect segue.
Yeah.
Do you keep track of all of your collectors? Is that a spreadsheet somewhere? Or do you use a fancier program? How do you keep track of who's buying and who's collecting?
Old school spreadsheet, quite sophisticated, a bit of a black book of everyone that's ever bought from me, what edition it is, fun to look back on. Also sad to look back on, comparing some years, but it's good. And like I said, 30% of my customers will repeat, which is great.
Oh, that's big.
Yeah, it's big. Yeah.
That's great. You have very stylistic work, so I get it. You had mentioned before licensing. Can you go into that a little bit?
Yes. So given that I've never taken a commission project, it's not something that I want to do right now. I've always said no to them. Okay. However, I am very open. We can discuss that. List. Yeah, we can have a discussion. But yeah, so it's something new that I think once you start to build a presence, then you're more likely, I think, in my view and who I talk to have licensing requests. And just given some of my series, I've worked in certain domains, that's been more prevalent, especially this year with the Olympics. I have a massive sport catalog, and I've done 5 at this point licensing, and all in Paris at the moment. So it's interesting and it goes in waves, but it is increasing for me.
So who's licensing and what technically are they licensing, and how do those deals usually present themselves financially? You don't have to give me exact numbers, but like just conceptually.
No. So it's either directly with the client or middleman agency that reaches out. It really depends. A lot of it's this with licensing, which I'm starting to understand. It's so hard to price yourself in licensing world because the minute you go for a third party to help licensing in an agent, you're knocking off 20, 25%. I'm not at that point where I'm willing to dock off 25%. It could range like 10, 25. That's where you're looking for the licensing at the moment, depending on the project, right? If it's small, it's small. But if it's large, like something in Paris, it's massive, right?
They're licensing it for what? For displays, for hotels, for
display. Yeah. So right now my work's in the metro stations in Paris.
Oh, okay.
There was one also for a massive event for some law firm. There's also been packaging. It's varied. But again, that is also something that there is not enough clarity in the artist world around licensing. It's still very hard to figure out.
How to price it, how to do it, to a certain extent, what you can get away with.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, cool. So from general sales, we're going to slide down the pike a little bit to customer acquisition and marketing. So you had mentioned that you had a big social moment. Can you explain what the social moment was and then what that did to your career?
Yeah, I think there was this kind of amazing period with Instagram where I was seeing, as I said, 17 to maybe 20, just lots of followers week on week. And I was just posting a lot. And static imagery was the thing back then. I know that world has changed. And that essentially was a lot of my customer acquisition was through Instagram. Nowadays, I would say those followers are a little dormant. And then again, I had this massive uptick around this pool series, which made CNN, BBC, you name it. It went larger than I ever thought it would. And then the New York Times picked it up the year after, and I got 30 new followers overnight. And again, lots of sales there. I wish it was consistent and it was this smooth uptick, but it's often not like that. And you have these viral moments. But the ones that I am able to convert to the mailing list, the ones that are there replying to those mailing lists, they're the buyers, they're the 5% that you need to keep running this.
That's all it is. I had a couple big viral social moments that changed the trajectory of my career. So I'm always curious. I find it amazing the impact of what one or two viral posts can do to one's notoriety, everything like that. You've obviously got a ton of press. Obviously, a lot was around the book. What made you decide to do the book, and how did you go around? Because I assume that was fantastic for customer acquisition and for just general notoriety. What made you one day wake up and be like, oh, I need to make a book? Or did someone come to you and pitch that? How did that whole process work? And when you did it, did you get press around it?
Yes. So I'll answer that around. So the book deal, I had 3 publishers come to me straight after that Times article. Like the Times article, it's one of those moments that changes your life. Like that's just a massive moment.
Okay, so we're taking these pictures, you're posting them on social, you got some social notoriety, and then you got a bunch of press because you were taking pictures of pools from above and someone wrote about it. And then from that, a publisher came to you and said, we want you to do a book.
Correct. There's a little bit of miss there. I got some direction from, I had a couple of people in media publications that were photo editors, and they were like, have you ever thought about putting some of these pool pics just at summer, send it out to some photo editors at some of these media publications, see what happens? And because, you know, the Guardian and BBC, they run these photo albums, and yeah, it made them. And so that advice was well taken, and I did it. And that's how that whole thing started. The press. I was also advised by someone very smart that was, you need to build trust with your audience. And as I said, my main market is this 45 to 65-year-old person that uses traditional media quite heavily. And that's their sign of trust. And so if, Brad, you're appearing in BBC or maybe the Wall Street Journal, that level of trust skyrockets. And then when they put your name into Google, it pops out, you're taking up the first 3 pages. It's validating who you are. And I don't think social media can give you that as much today when it's just person after person after person. That was also something that I apply to my strategy now, is this building of trust.
Since that's your strategy, like, do you have a publicist? Did you hire a PR person to help make sure you get placed in these places? Or did you do it yourself? Was it organic? How'd you go about doing it?
No, I'm a control freak. So for every time I have a media list that I, have curated over years, that again, people I trust that are photo editors that will get my work straight to, the decision room, and it either makes it or doesn't. But I have that relationship with every series. Look, down the track, I probably won't. I'd love to have a publicist to work and figure out the stories a bit better and have more time. But again, I'm still 31 and I'm quite still new to this. So I'm hoping down the track we can outsource some of this.
Let me tell you, I think the smarter way is to own those relationships. I have a friend who's an artist, Matty Moe, and he was famous for having all of the press people, and he just wrote his own press releases, right? He didn't need anybody else to contact the PR world. And because of that, he was able to leverage his own stuff by sending emails, right? So just do the work.
Yeah.
Are there other channels you use other than Instagram? Do you use TikTok? Do you use Pinterest? Are there any other social tools that you find effective?
I dabble in TikTok. I think if I put more effort into it, that'd be something I could do. I think there's a lot of something around behind the scenes with TikTok and Reels that I should be investing more time. I've seen it can go off when I've got time. I think I'm going to have a videographer for this massive ballet shoot that's going to create the timeline and execute on the story and the production for the behind the scenes of this ballet shoot, which I find people are going to enjoy. People love to see what goes on behind the scenes. That's a strategy I will be taking forward.
The behind the scenes stuff, obviously you have drones and such. Do you like the recording of the recording?
Yeah.
I would assume that's really cool.
Yeah, it's that. And also how I got to those shots or drawing them out and then seeing that through to how it turns out in the actual frame when I'm with, for example, the ballet dancers in frame and their shape, this is the way it was drawn. And the drone's up there flying down and there's a choreographer putting them in position. That is what people love. So I will be doing more of that. It's just, again, cognitive load. I need to outsource this to someone to manage themselves because it's too much for one person. Yeah.
But I would assume it would make great Reels and TikTok content.
It would, correct.
It would, yeah. It feels like that'd be a nice draw. I've always tell people, like, me putting a piece of artwork up isn't what sells the artwork. It's usually like the weird videos of how the thing got made that people find the most, or it's some oddly satisfying thing. For me, it's like balloons doing certain things. So yeah, I get it. On social, do you ever play with ads or anything, or it's mostly organic traffic?
No, I haven't. I played once upon a time, but no, I haven't touched that world.
I'm always curious as to how artists build their audience and find their audience and get more and more, keep that funnel, so to speak, jogging and growing. Are there any other tools or tricks that you use to bring new followers to your work?
No, it's really just those three channels: social media, press, the newsletter. A lot of it's just organic, which I feel has been, because I haven't really done ads, but it's worked okay for me in the past. It's something I'm not against doing with ads because I definitely, as I said, know my demographic quite well.
Right.
And it's something I could play with for sure.
Yeah, it's a weird thing with artists. Artists always get nervous. Oh, beneath me, like this weird fight between like financial success and being socially cool and what that is. Trust me, we've all had I know I've had I can't take an ad out, but I have another business where we do a lot with ads. They work particularly well.
Okay. Good to know. Maybe we can chat offline. No.
Do you do any collabs with other artists or with brands? I would assume just because of the nature of your work, there has to be a couple brands that would be good collab partners for you.
Yeah, as I kind of mentioned before, like I'm not at a point where I wanted to collab/commission right now. I'm just so focused on what's in my brain and get it out there on a piece of paper that if I had a brief coming down, that I just wouldn't. It's just not where I want to be. Having said that, I do collaborate with other artists, whether that's choreographers or in my world for my work. So that's where I'm at in terms of collaboration. There are actually influencers that are, I don't know if you've seen them pop up, but they're starting to promote other artists, but they're not artists. They're just influencers that are promoting art. So I actually have this thing in Paris in a month or so where he's designing up the storyline of a collaboration where we work together on reproducing one of my shots, which is interesting. And I was very open to doing that. So that stuff I will do, but brands, no, unless it's a licensing deal.
Okay.
Yeah.
I could see just because you do everything from like up top, you just have that cool perspective and angle. Like there are just so many things you could insert there correctly. Like some of your pool shots, like the light and the way the shadow falls, you're like, oh, that's a pool, but it like really looks a piece of conceptual art. So I could see that kind of technique and imagery being used for really cool product shot. Like I could see lots of people interested in that. Let's move now because that's social marketing, press. Let's switch over to the cost side of the ledger. So the thing I always ask people is, what do you spend most of your money on?
Right now, it's production of the projects. That's where all my money, it's a sinking pit right now. That's where it all goes for now. That's, again, collaborations, payment for all the people that I'm working with. That's where it is. It's not actually gear. I'm actually not like a true photographer where all they talk about is gear and cameras and lenses. That's not me. Whatever I can do to just get the shot, I don't care. Like, just give me the shot.
Okay, fair enough. I just have to know, how many drones do you have?
2 right now, and it's only 2 of the
really?
Mavic 3s. Yeah, no, stacks of batteries. The batteries is the thing that's gonna kill you. I just hover, right? I don't fly them. It's just really just to get that shot. But when you do that, you actually use more battery power because you don't have the efficiency of moving through the air with the wind cooling. It's a whole lot of technicals that I don't really understand, but you use more battery power hovering than flying.
Okay. Now, when you do your shots, are you physically there, like watching the drone, taking the picture, or are you like orchestrating and organizing and being the conductor? Or both?
It's both. Generally, there's some sort of movement person or choreographer there. I've got one drone that's correct on a viewport, but also that viewport is being signaled out to another monitor, like my laptop, where everyone can see what's going on. However, the shoots that we're going to be doing moving forward, how the drone works, because they're bigger, is that someone will actually be flying the drone, and then another control will be for the viewport of the camera and controlling the camera. So in that instance, I will be on the camera side, and there'll be a drone assister or drone, flying that side of it.
And it's a drone that carries a regular camera, correct?
Yeah, regular camera. It's a phase 1, which is like 25 kilos. Yeah, it's massive.
Oh, yeah. Does it look like just a drone with an SLR on it, or is it like a special thing?
It's a special thing. They've essentially got a huge, massive like drone, and they've custom built this frame onto it where it can hold a medium format camera. And technicals, I don't know all of it, but they signal to the camera and they operate it that way wirelessly.
Okay, so basically you have a Hasselblad like stuck to flying.
Correct. That's a better way of putting it. You've done it better than me. Yeah.
Okay. And so where are you spending most of your time? Like, what does a week in the life of Brad Walls look like?
It does change depending on the projects right now. If we talk about solely my art time, 50% of it is on logistics and planning, 20% on inbound requests, whether that's licensing, print, that production process, and the other 30% right now, unfortunately, it's on actually creating mood boarding, drawing, understanding the actual visuals that I want to produce. But I've put 0% in there right now for actually executing on a shoot. But to me, the smallest part of every project is actually the day.
And it's amazing how fast it all disappears, huh?
Yeah.
I know we briefly talked about team, but if we can dig a little bit, do you have anybody that is permanent with you, or do you just gear up for each one of these productions?
It's pretty much a VA that does a lot of my mock-ups for clients, and that's full-time. Like they keep running the mock-ups and everything, because it's quite tedious to do that kind of work. I have a part-time retoucher, editor that I work with. I know it's a bit of a murky word in the art world for that, but I'm fully transparent. I need help. I see the vision of the project, but executing on every detail would be impossible. So I have help in that respect. And then for each project, it's like contracting out who I need, right? It's a choreographer, it's lighting, it's the camera equipment, the drone guys, whoever it may be. It just depends on the project.
How many of these kind of projects can you fit in a year? Are you doing a couple, or are you doing like one a month? What is the lead time on them? And then how many in advance are you thinking of? Like, how big is your roster of upcoming projects in your head?
It's a great question. I think I'm going to understand that better. This is my first time doing something of this scale. And I've already foreseeing the scale being over different series. For example, like this could be done in the synchro world. I know that's there. It's just next year at some point if it's successful. But I would say I'd love to do, and I was doing this, 6 to 8 projects a year. Now, they might not be the scale of this one in September, but I'd love to produce 100 works a year. I think that'd be a great goal for me to do. But right now, I think this project is something I'm going to learn a lot from. And yeah, there's not many this year.
When you make a project, and obviously you create a body of work from that project, what percentage of the sales of that body of work being new or right away? And how much is like a residual drag that like someone comes a year later and says, oh my God, I want that print?
I would say it's like 50-50. Every series I try to get a lot of press. I push it out as hard as possible. And then people will come from another series right down the track and be like, oh no, I actually prefer this piece better. I actually want to down the track. I know we probably haven't crossed this question. I want to run my own pop-up gallery. Like as soon as this series is done, it's happening in New York. Like I'm going to run it. I don't want anyone else to manage that. I want it some immersive experience. Very CJ Hendry. I'm sure you're familiar with CJ.
Boy.
Yeah.
No
we all are, right? We all are.
Be mad.
Yeah. That's the model I would love to aspire to get to, is to run my own thing and fill it just with some cool people that are not stuffy art world, but just love, for instance, ballet. And we just want to talk about ballet, want to show some ballet.
Very cool. Okay, so just a couple boring questions. Like the finances. Do you manage all your own finances? Do you have an accountant that deals with all this? Do you deal with QuickBooks? How do you deal with that portion of the business?
Not to the point I should. I can always be better with that. The accountant comes in when it's tax time, right? But I'm very automated in terms of how does Squarespace and Stripe, automated to Excel, and like all of that with the expense, like that's the cost, my margins. It's all done programmatically in Excel. I've set those up. I'm a bit of a nerd like that. That's all been set up so that I don't spend time, manual efforts running these budgets. Where it gets variable is obviously with project to project, which, that changes. But sales side, no, that's pretty automated.
Yeah, just fuck tons of expenses before you actually get any feedback, or like whether it's going to sell. It's terrifying.
Exactly. Exactly.
Now, do you show at art fairs, or do you do exhibition? Obviously, you just said you want to do your own pop-up gallery. Do you do any other exhibitions or any of those channels, or no?
Yeah, it's kind of what I was mentioning before. There's a couple galleries that still float around with my stuff. And time to time, I'll have a gallery that I really like. And I have a personal relationship with the curator that says, hey, do you want to throw me a few pieces for this show that we've got that might work? But I'm not inclined to do it all the time. And it's kind of case by case basis. It's just not where my focus is. Again, I'm not a big fan of the art world. I actually know that's not where a lot of my buyers come from. I think my work is very relatable. It's just the people that seem to come to me and it's just like, oh, it's a picture of a swimmer. It's a picture of, and I feel like it's very relatable. So I have a certain clientele. And sometimes at these art fairs, I think my work could be a little lost in that. Yeah, it's just different. Like the affordable art fairs do okay. But again, this is why I'm in the US. The US has been amazing for me. As I said, California solely funds my business.
God bless America. I have just also one weird pool question. So the 89 pools, were they chosen because of like architectural significance? How did you find them? Normally I don't ask art questions, but this one has been like, I'm like looking through all your stuff. I'm just like, how'd you pick?
Yeah, 60% I would say were chosen based on my fascination with mostly the architect that was behind it. And I was a fanboy in a lot of those shoots because I got to meet a couple of them. And it was very distracting being at the shoot and one of them was there. And I'm like, I've looked up for you for 5 years, 10 years, and you're right there. So that was very cool and an experience I won't forget. But majority, were me just trying to narrow down what look I want and feel. And then the other 40% was simply Google Maps. And if you think about it, my work is really just the high res of Google Maps.
Scroll around neighborhoods?
Yeah, essentially. I had an assistant like working across different cities, and essentially you could do a book literally in LA, but you might get a lot of the same, but there is so many damn pools in a lot of these cities that you had to be so choosy with what you wanted, and you couldn't have the same multi-million dollar houses because it would just be boring. But yeah, it was those two minutes.
Very cool. So another question. Do you have, and this is more on the habits and personal side, do you have like a mentor or a coach or someone that like you go to for advice? And obviously as the artist, you're like, this is my path, but like someone you bounce ideas off of?
Yeah, I've got 3 to 4 really close people in the art world that one I reached out to immediately. It was my first mentor when I got the book deal, and I had no idea what I was entering into. No idea. I've never seen a publishing agreement. I don't know what these words mean. And he was so kind that he took the time and just went through it with me. He pushed me into his agent. And in terms of business side and understanding licensing, a lot of that context, in terms of like art direction, that kind of thing, not so much, but more on the business side is where I have the mentors, because I feel like that's murky and hard, especially.
Did you just reach out to that person? How did you find and connect with, or had you had a relationship with them? Like, how did you go about finding and getting that mentor?
That particular person, he's the godfather of aerial photography. He had judged one of my images in a competition, and he was familiar with my work. And I've always looked up to what he's done in the industry. And I reached out and I was just like, hey, are you free for a 30-minute call? I see you've done like some books and just trying to pick your brain. It's honestly always like that. That's always the intro, because I don't know. I'm the same. If someone reaches coming out to me, I'm like, they're entering the world and I might know something that could help them. I'll take the time, because I think what you give out, you'll get back. You got to find them, but they're out there. Those people are out there that they can give you a bit of help.
That's what this podcast was, right? Like I track people. This is just my secret way of pulling that off. I get people to give me an hour of their time and get to meet cool new artists, and they tell me cool secrets, and I'm like, okay, this win. It's like win.
Yeah.
So I'm always curious of just picking up the phone and asking. It's amazing how often that works and how scared people are to do it. So we're almost coming to the end of our hour. I usually we try to do it a hard stop so I don't waste your time. So a couple questions I always ask the same at the end of every podcast, bookends. As an artist, what was your greatest achievement? And then on the flip side of that, what was your biggest mistake and biggest regret?
It's a good question. It's a tough one. You could go in many directions with it. I think the biggest achievement for me, and I think it's recurring, is honestly when someone says they look up to you and your work. Because I think that's one of the biggest things that you can have on someone. It's the biggest thing that happens on me if I look up to someone's work and I give them that feedback. I could obviously say, I was like a publishing agreement and all of that. But to me, ultimately, I'm doing this for more than money, even though we're on this podcast and it's all about money. But there is more to it than me. And if I'm able to inspire someone to, I don't know, pick up a pen, pick up a fucking drone, like whatever it is, do something that you love to do and don't care what anyone thinks, because that's how I started. And if I can give that back to someone, that would be great. So I find that's my biggest achievement when that happens. The biggest regret, it's very easy to say a lot of the gallery stuff, but it's not. I would say a lot of these are learnings. Yeah, it's a hard one, because a lot of these, I would say, have been learnings. And whether you say it was the gallery thing that pushed me in a direction understanding more about publishing agreements, or it could be around not leaving my job sooner to fulfill this, but then again, it allowed me to have the money to do it. So I will say that I don't really have one at this stage, because they've all kind of turned into something that I've learned from. I know that's a very interview-esque kind of spin, but that's where I'm going to leave that one.
By the way, I think that's honestly super wise. Yeah. The idea that, like, look, I always joke that my best artwork came from a mistake of me trying to make something else, right? Like, being able to frame your mistakes and your failures not as failures, but as learning experience and positive, is why you'll be successful. That's the difference between harping on the negative versus people who say that they're positive.
Yeah.
Whatever.
But what I actually will say that is the regret that I find, actually now I've just thought about it, is to, and people like listening out there, I listened for too long about what other people thought. And as soon as I relinquished that, got rid of that, the work immediately got a lot freer and I was able to expand. Ultimately, because people don't really care after the 2 minutes that they're thinking about you and they're onto something else. So that's the one probably.
And last but not least, do you have any other advice to other artists, or tools or a tip or something that you want to pay it forward to anyone listening to this?
Persistence will win, not the talent. So I've seen many artists that are fantastic, even the most brilliant artists, photographers, and they give up too soon. And it's persistence that will keep you in there. Yeah, keep going, keep finding your visual language and what you want to do. And yeah, the moment that it's no longer giving you that flow moment, it's time to put it away. But yeah, just keep going. It's never about talent.
Ugh, fucking what a great way to end it. Thank you. That was awesome. So everybody, once again, this is Brad Walls. You can find him as Brad Canvas on Instagram and bradcanvas.com. Go check out his work. Go buy some stuff. You can Google his name and he is all over the place. And you will never look at a pool the same way again. Thank you, Brad. I appreciate your time and thank you for sharing everything. Really appreciate it.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, man.
Okay.